Alrighty, well I've had a bit of fun here this morning with these blooming propane bottles. So anyway, I'm in here next to the shower and long and short of it is the stove I've got is a high pressure stove. It's not a standardised regulator one, and you can sort of tell when it's getting out of gas because you can turn it up full bore and, well, it really just doesn't put out. Because there's no actual regulator. As the bottle's dying, the stove itself is dying. So I went and made a coffee this morning, and instead of taking about 3 minutes to boil, or maybe 5, it took like about 7 or 8. And I thought, oh shit, yeah, we really got to change this thing. So what I usually do, because I would much rather have an actual, shower, there's the old style Coleman hot water on demand that you can't buy anymore. I would much rather be able to have a shower guaranteed and not be stuck in the middle of the night trying to have a shower and have to spend 20 minutes moving around propane bottles and fucking around with gas fittings. So I always say, well, first priority for any new bottles that come in, like these big ones, this is like your 100-pounder here, this goes right to the floor, 45 kilo, 100-pound bottle. Any of those that come in, I always prioritise the hot water system first, because the stove, it'll still run slow, and I've got a second stove that uses little butane canisters if need be, and I'll be fine anyway, if that runs out. So anyway, I've gone and bought in, I got the one off the hot water system, which was still about a quarter full, and put it out with the stove, and then I've gone and got this one, which has been sitting around here for a while. I've got a few of these actually. That's a full 9 kilo or 20-pound bottle, and so I put that on to the hot water system and used the quarter full hot water system one on the stove. All of a sudden the stove pressure comes blasting back, as it usually does. And I went around and, I went to my parents first to pick up some stuff I had in the freezer, and then from there I went to the local propane guy, and there was a young lass there, probably early 20s, and I told her, look, I need another propane bottle delivered tomorrow. Lo and behold, I get back and go to set up this little sod here, and what do you know? Where she meets where it goes from the POL fitting to the crimp, she's pissing gas out. Oh, it was not good. Yeah, you could hear it, you could smell it, it was just obvious. And the real trouble has been that I never had these large bottles raised up at all. They were just sitting directly on the ground. And over the last 7.5 years, this little, instead of being like a nice, neat curve, if you can see it, of the propane line like that, it's sort of been a bit harder when it comes down here. So it's a bit more, it's pulling on that crimp basically. So that was buggered, and for the low price of $40, I had to drive quite a number of miles to go to 2 different shops and get one for $40. To come back and go and hook it on to this bottle here, bingo, fine, perfect. Well, lo and behold, instead of coming around tomorrow, then the propane guy comes around today, a few hours after I called in on a Sunday, and drops off this one here. So rightio, I bring it in. I think we've got to be a bit smarter this time, so I put a couple of pavers. I've got one there and another one there you can see, and it's sitting on the pavers. Okay, good. So I go and hook it on, and I turn the tap on the top of the bottle, and I can hear a hissing away for about 5 minutes. Now, usually they take up the slack in the drop in the pressure of the line. In between all this, I've had to, turn taps off, then start the hot water system just to get all the pressure out of the line, because if you don't, as you take it off, it'll freeze, and apparently you get like condensation and other bullshit in the line, which will then you know, slowly clog up and bugger up your burner jets inside your hot water system. So each one of these I've had to, you know, bleed the air out when I hooked it on, and then before I unhooked it I've had to turn the tap off and then run the system again to bleed the propane out of the system. So I've gone and done all that, blah blah blah, finally get to this one, hook it on, and I turn the tap on here, the green tap, and I can hear it hissing for about 5 minutes, and I'm like, this is not normal. It hisses for about 10 or 15 seconds as the pressure in the line increases. You know, because you've turned the tap on and you've got, you know, a decent amount of pressure in this, but the line's just, you know, normal surrounding air pressure sort of thing. But usually, you know, within less than 5 seconds it's built up that pressure and it's fine. And this thing keeps hissing. I think it's son of a bitch. And I'm trying to tighten it by hand with this stupid little black thing they have here that, you know, spins around and all that. I thought, oh, you bastard. And it was pretty obvious that just... like, you can sort of get your hands into this one with a big gap in the front, but really this is all very... And you get your piece at the top here, and it's not very easy to get your hand in there, you know, because it's not, you know, it's not even, it's like a bloody inch wide gap, you know, and you're worried that you're going to hit your hand on the bottom of this piece, the steel bit there, and yeah, so I thought, shit, what am I going to do? And I always wondered, and I sort of suspected you could pop these black things off backwards and then just get the blasted spanner onto it, and what do you know, you can pop it off backwards without a problem. And it popped off backwards, and you can pop it forwards again like that. You give it a little wriggle, you pop it off backwards again. So I popped it off backwards, and I got the big spanner. I didn't actually quite have a spanner big enough when I first lived over here. I used to have to keep borrowing my father's one, and in the end I thought, bugger this, go and buy one. So I went and bought a bigger one, and with that I got, it was quite a bit more. It was maybe another 3/4 of a turn on tightening it, and at least another, yeah, it was probably about a half a revolution, maybe more, probably about half, to be honest. But it tightened it up well enough that I didn't have a problem anymore. It was no longer hissing. Now, how did I know that was the problem? How did I know the bottle wasn't the problem? Well, it's simple. Yes, that's bubbles. And that's dishwashing detergent. And guess what I've done for about a year? Or actually probably, yeah, about a year and 3 months at the radiator place. Do leak tests on radiators, some in the open air, some underwater, which are very easy to see when they're underwater, but not so much when they're not underwater. And you go through quite a lot of this gear here, which is just your detergent, you know, your dishwashing crap, cheap liquid, and basically you give it a squirt and you watch, and it just starts growing a whole heap of bubbles. That was just an electric shave, a bit that fell on the ground. And yeah, I could see this little sod was having bubbles right down the bottom there. So I determined it was pretty obvious that the fitting just wasn't on hard enough. Put it on, and yeah, we all good. But the amount of time you can waste lugging around blasted heavy bottles, pissing around with connections and fittings and hoses that fail, blah 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 blah. Oh man, because these things, I mean, they're not light, you know. And even if they are light, just the steel in the damn cylinder is pretty phenomenal, you know. So anyway, that hose went for 7.5 years, I believe. So that's not too bad, especially being one of these Coleman things where you've got the grand mixture of American design, where they cheap out as much as they can, and you know, do it as simple and basic and usually as cheap as possible, and then to top it off they actually get it manufactured in China, you know. And so as a result, being manufactured by a Chinese subcontractor, you know, these I'll put it like this, they're sort of like the Chrysler of camping equipment, if you know what I mean. Having said that, though, it's been surprisingly good. But yeah, I also noted this morning that when I first took the line off, I had a lot of propane still in it, and it all froze up and everything on the original failed line. And the reason for that is that these are heaps of shit, essentially, and this one's had a life, and as you may notice from the front thingy missing. And basically speaking, the batteries that they put in might have worked great as prototypes, but the Chinese built ones they got just do not supply current enough to the hot water pump, or to the water pump rather, so you have an external battery, and Mr. External Battery, I thought he was going to die about a year ago, and guess what? He's almost died. And I had a low battery warning come up, and I thought it had stopped running propane through it, and the propane had basically bled out of the bottle that I'd turned off that's now on the stove. It kind of hadn't. It's just that when the igniter tried to reignite one of the burners, which was sort of going down or something like that, it may have been that one of the burners was going down, but then again it may not have been, and I think it was just plain old flat battery, because the low battery warning light, the one in the middle there, that turned on and it all died, and I just assumed, oh well, the gas has gone out. No, it hadn't. So Mr. Battery that almost died a year ago, it's a 20 amp hour 6-volt battery. It looks like she's now she's dying too. I had thought of getting the 12-volt battery that's underneath there and hooking up a 6-volt thingy to it and blah 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 blah. That's the one you can see down there. That's an old tractor battery that's running off a 20 amp hour panel, 20 watt panel rather. There's a little charge controller you can see. Little glowing light there. And I had thought of running a thing off that, but if you want a proper 12-volt to 6-volt converter, oh, it's a whole stack of money for, let's face it, some hot water system which is, only just hanging on. And I sort of get the feeling that I might go and spend $120 or $80 or something for a good one of those, and then the hot water system itself dies. So seeing the batteries are only about $30 or something, or $40 I think it is. They're not cheap, these blooming 12-volt to 6-volt converters. I think the minimum 80, that's probably what I need to be about, might even be 120. It's been a long time since I looked at prices, but I think I'm better just getting another $35 battery and just sticking that on. And lo and behold, I am not very far at all from where I work. Is not very far at all from a battery place, and literally, I could just spin around and go get one after work, and they do a whole cluster of different batteries, because they, that's like where they distribute a particular brand or several brands from. And I'm pretty certain you'll walk in off the street and, well, I'll just go there and find out, I suppose.